everybody. Welcome to Project Herpetoculture podcast. This is episode 45. I'm your host, Roy Arthur Blodgett, joined as always by the dashing Philip Leitz, who's currently in outer space. And and we have an excellent guest today that I'm excited to introduce. But before we do that, I'm going to go through our standard housekeeping. And first, I want to give a shout out to Dylan and the Animals at Home Network for hosting us.
The GOAT.
Also want to give a shout out to Charlie for editing our audio and helping us out with the video editing and all of that. It's greatly appreciated. And I also want to mention our sponsors. We've got Custom Reptile Habitats, and they make some amazing premium PVC reptile enclosures. And we have an affiliate link for them posted in our description. And if you make a purchase through that link, we'll receive a little commission at no additional cost to you. We also have Redline Shipping for all of your reptile shipping needs, supplies, labels, all of that. They've got you covered. And last but not least, we have Cold-Blooded Caffeine, and they're roasters of premium coffees from across the globe that donate a small percentage from each bag of coffee sold to conservation in those coffee growing regions, which also boasts some pretty impressive herpetofauna. So check them out and use the code Project Herp for 10% off your order there. And last but not least, we have a Patreon for anyone who's interested in supporting the show directly and offering their offering their support to help us produce the show. You can sign up there. We have a few different tier options, and it's always appreciated. So thanks for all those who have already signed up on our Patreon. Y'all are really helping us out there, and we really appreciate it. And with all that said, gonna introduce our guests, and that is Ben from Unseen Diversity on Instagram. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be honest.
To begin, yeah, good. Me too, man. To begin, I would love to hear just a little bit about how you got started in herpetoculture and just kind of animal keeping in general. I know you keep more than just reptiles. So How did it all start for you?
Yeah, so basically my come up was pretty, I want to say, close to what most of us are experiencing, just like foraging out in nature, trying to find some critters, be it, I don't know, some lizards or bugs or insects or whatever. Yeah, I was always that guy who was very interested in nature in general. And my parents, they allowed my sister and me to have a pet at the age of 8. And my sister, she chose a rabbit. And I wanted to go for something more, I don't know, exotic, I was interested in getting a lizard, but at the end of the day, it turned out that I came home with a normal colored corn snake. And basically from that point on, I was always into reptile keeping basically all my life, or animal keeping, let's say it like that. And from there on, I was getting more and more into, first of all, reptiles, but after that, also getting into the aquarium hobby, insect keeping, and all sorts of different small animals. To be honest, pretty early on, I was always into these, encyclopedias about all different kinds of animals, and I noticed that I have a strong passion for small mammals. And still to this day, I feel like the small mammals, that's what's the most close to my heart. And still it quickly became my main passion and focus. And that's where I am at today, full on into the little mammals. Yeah.
Excellent. So awesome.
Yeah,
so I noticed you.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you like, I can give you a little impression about what my coming up was until the age of 18, when I moved out from my parents' house, and how it went on from there, because there was a huge, I want to say, shifting point in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Yeah. So I was I was building my children's room into more or less like a collection of different terrariums and aquariums. And it was getting kind of more and more until I got the opportunity to build a bigger setup for my savanna monitor in the basement of my parents' house. Yeah, that was all happening when I was still living at my parents' place, and I had the huge wish to rebuild the shed that was in our garden, kind of like the sheds that Roy you have on your land at the moment.
Yeah.
And I was asking my parents to keep some monkeys in the shed in our garden, and they said, okay, then you can have some monkeys when you are 16 and you still have the wish to do so. Yeah. And so sooner or later I turned 16 and the vision in my head was getting more and more clear. So my parents said, oh, it's a little early. Maybe once you are 18. So sooner or later I turned 18. But the wish of transforming my my parents' cabin was over, and I knew that the only way to really fulfill my dreams was to move out and do my own thing from then. Yeah, and so the day came when I moved out at the age of 18, and I already fixed my first deal for a small mammal before I moved out. But I picked it up as soon as I had my own first apartment, and it was a tree shrew. You know what that is? In the scientific language, you call them Tupaya belangeri. Have you heard about them?
About that.
Okay. Still to this day, one of my absolute favorite animals, and I'm really hoping to get into them. At the moment, it's possible for sure, but it's not the right thing to do, and I try to limit myself at the moment. But tree shrews, they are, you can say, they come from the family of these insect-eating mammals like hedgehogs and shrews and the tenrecs from Madagascar, for example. But oh no, if I said they come from the family, it's not really right. They are the missing link in between of primates and these insect-feeding mammals. Yeah. So the tree shrew, you can say like that, it's the most primitive form of something that is related to primates. There's still another animals is this flying, I think you call them kologu or something like that. It's like big flying, gliding mammal from Southeast Asia. They are also in this kind of missing link area, but the tree shrew, they are amazing. I can really tell you that. Yeah. So I got my first male tree shrew when I was 18, when I moved out. And from that point, it, you know about this spiraling out of control. I want to say it was the starting point of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, you said you were also keeping insects. What sort of insects have you spent some time keeping and messing around with?
Mm-hmm. So first it was the basic stick insects that I guess they're pretty popular for children to keep. Yeah, pretty easy to feed. Still at the moment I still have a colony of stick insects. It's a different species, but still into them. Wow. So yeah, I kind of gained some experiences with stick insects, but the population was soon getting out of control. So we today I would never do it again, but we just threw them out in the garden. And got rid of them that way. I was like, I don't know, maybe 10 years old or something like that. But yeah, the winter is really strong in Germany. So they are all dead by now. But so that was the first insect that I was keeping. And after that, I was getting into the whip spiders. I'm sure it's definitely not an insect, but it's how do you say?
Arachnid.
Arachnid, it's a critter, yeah. And the whip spiders, they are still very close to my heart. I love them. So I had a pretty big setup for them. If I remember correctly, it was like, do you know how to deal with centimeters and meters?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was like maybe something like 60 by 60 by 120 centimeters, a setup for whip spiders, and you can keep them as a group communally. And so I had like 3 individuals. I think it was a male and 2 females, and also had some breeding, let's say success, but it's not difficult to breed them at the end. And that was started my passion for these crawling animals too. But yeah, other than that, never really into the insects, other than just catching stuff in the garden and keeping it in little containers like millipedes and isopods and stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. Really, really cool.
I think that's what most of us did when we were younger, right? Collect stuff we can find outside, try to keep it alive for some time, and just have a joy doing it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be the way it starts for most of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I know for sure the first stuff I ever collected was, I was born in Connecticut. And so, you know, my mom just had a heyday with me collecting garter snakes and salamanders and praying mantises from a giant backyard. And I think probably got frustrated to me with to no end with how many of them I caught. Ended up, I'm sure I lost snakes in the house. I have no doubt. So yeah, I think it's kind of how it all starts. I think it's how it starts for most of us anyway.
Definitely.
Also, the losing snakes, I can kind of identify myself with that.
Yeah.
And I lost my corn snake. Found it again after weeks. I want to say maybe 6 or 8 weeks. Lost it in the top level of the house. Found it in the basement, and it was crazy. I was sure it's gonna be dead, but it was not the case.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's nuts. Very nuts.
So you said that it started to kind of spiral a little bit. I'm curious if you can speak a little bit more to that and kind of where that trajectory led.
Yeah, oh man, I've been really reflecting a lot about my life in general, because I made a lot of mistakes growing up. And
you and me both, man.
Sorry, say that again, Phil.
Oh, I just said you and me both.
Yeah, it's crazy. Life is a challenge, I can tell you. But at the moment, I'm pretty happy how I'm figuring it out, but still a long way to go. Yeah, so I was getting into these tree shrews, and I was searching for a partner for my male. Yeah, so I posted an ad online. Hey, I'm looking for a female tree shrew. And there was a guy contacting me saying, oh, well, I have a female available. Maybe I even have 2 if you like to. What do you think about it? So I said, okay, yeah, I'm interested. What's the price? Yeah, we managed to find a good deal for both of them. So I met this guy, and I will not say where he was living, but I visited this guy at his home place, and I was expecting to find a breeder of the tree shrews for exchanging of some experiences and whatever. Yeah, I think I was 19 at that age. So I came to this guy's house. He led me into the basement, and it was incredible. So this guy, he had transformed basically half of his house into an animal keeping. I don't want to call it a store. I don't want to call it a breeding facility, but things like that were going on there. So this guy, later on, I got to know him better. He was really into the zoo scene, and he found this niche for himself to collect all of the surplus that was available in the zoos in Germany, also other countries in Europe. And he was just getting the surplus for free or for very little money, and then reselling it from his basement.
Wow.
So in his collection, you could find basically everything that is not bigger than a deer and that has hair. Yes, it was insane. When I was there for the first time, I can remember he had some, where can I even start? I want to say an armadillo was one of the things that were not really exciting about what I could find there. There were monkeys, there were, all different kinds of rodents that you have never seen before. Um, some marsupials, like the, how do you call them? These opossums from Australia, fox. I don't know what you call them. No, it was not a quoll. Oh, let's just call them a possum. Yeah,
Okay.
big ones, bigger than a cat. But also some these little deers, you call them muntjak. Flying foxes, crazy. It was insane.
Wow.
So today when I reflect on this situation, I should have walked out of that door backwards, but no. I was a little kid. I was very impressionable, and I was extremely excited about what was going on there. It was not only about mammals. There were also some snakes and some crocodiles and stuff like that, turtles and stuff like that. But yeah, so I happily picked up my tupaya and talked with this guy a lot. Yeah, he quickly realized that I'm very into this stuff. Yeah, I knew basically all of the species that he was keeping. I knew some I don't know, how to deal with stuff like that. And he was, I want to say, kind of a criminal. And I was kind of looking up to that guy from the first minute that I met him. And so I offered him to help him in any kind of way. Yeah, not only pick up my animals, but I said, okay, if there's anything that I can do for you, let me try to figure it out, and let's just stay in contact, because I was thinking of this guy like this amazing animal god. Yeah, I've never seen anything like that before. So got back home. Yeah, I took some pictures of the animals that he had at his place. And a couple of weeks later or so, he told me, "Oh, you remember these Asian leopard cats that I have at my place? Yeah, you know these Asian leopard cats? It's the wild version of these Bengal cats. Yeah,
I have two of them.
I know. I just seen your Instagram story about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he told me, "Oh, you remember these Asian leopard cats that I have at my place? It's a young pair. You have some pictures, right?" I said, yeah, I have some pictures. "Oh, can you do me a favor? Can you maybe post them online? Can you maybe try to find somebody who's interested in them? And I know that you go to these expos from time to time. Maybe you can find somebody, and we can try to give them away." Yeah. And so it did exactly that. Yeah. Not knowing what was about to come, or not knowing about any kind of legal situation or anything. I knew that there was some kind of paperwork involved, but this guy, he said to me, "Oh yeah, we're going to figure it out. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." So it was not very difficult to find somebody who was interested in these animals. And I used to go to this ham show. Yeah. You know, this Terroristica ham, the biggest reptile expo in Europe. Yeah. I always used to go there, and so I set up an appointment with this guy who was interested in this pair of cats. Yeah. Before the show, I went to this guy's place. Give me a name. Give me a random name for that guy.
Bill.
Bill.
We'll just call him Bill.
Let's call him Bill. Okay. I went to Bill's place. Yeah. Picked up these two cats. Yeah. He just gave them to me like that. I didn't have to sign anything. Did not have to put down any money. No, nothing. And so I had these big boxes with two wild cats in my trunk. Drove to Ham the next day. Handed them over to some guy from a different country, and had 5,000 euros in cash in my hand when I was 19 years old. Never seen really money in my life, and it kind of felt overwhelming, to be honest. So at the end of the day, went to the bank, put in the cash, made a bank transfer, 5,000 euro to this guy. I kept zero, but I felt like I did something great. I don't know. I felt like I achieved something, and I can remember that it felt good, even though I did not have any direct benefit from that. But I was always into this mindset, and I'm still in this mindset today. And I think it's not a bad mindset to have. If there is somebody that you look up to, try to solve some problems for them. Yeah. And try to,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, get some opportunities by doing that. The thing is just, who are you looking up to? And I did some major mistakes in this topic, but I was always into this solving problems, not immediate benefit for myself. So this was my first deal. It was two Asian leopard cats, two Asian leopard cats. And from that point on, this guy knew that he could trust me. I was handling the situation as well as I could. Yeah, transferring the money, not keeping anything, and being in time always and everything. Roy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point on, this guy was becoming kind of like my mentor in this topic about exotic mammals. And there was one big goal that I was trying to achieve. It's basically the same goal that I'm still trying to achieve this day, but it was a very interesting journey along the way, and we're going to talk about that. But I was always seeing this big goal, and I was seeing this person as somebody who could help me achieve what I want to achieve. So I was getting into this, let's call it animal trafficking, because that's basically what it is. He sourced some animals. He wanted me to help him out to distribute them all over Europe, basically. And in the beginning, I was not getting any commission at all. I was just doing it for free. In my mind, I was always like into, oh yes, I want to put my hands on monkeys and crocodiles and stuff like that. It's exciting, even if I'm only catching an animal, putting it in a box, driving it somewhere, or handing it over. It's enough of a benefit for me. But later on, I was also making a little bit of money by doing that. And over time, over years, I can say, I have been involved into a lot of transfers or deals, let's call it like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was speaking about spiraling out of control, and we're just getting started, to be honest. Yeah.
When you first met this guy, this Bill, we're calling him Bill, right? That's the name we're going to give him. Was there no, none of this is meant to be judgmental or critical or anything like that at all. Cause I've done countless stupid, dumbass things in my life that I look back on and I'm like, God damn it. Was there no sense of that, like, looking around, like maybe this isn't cool? Like, I don't know, I don't mean that as in you should have, because I've definitely gone into some situations where I've been like, wow, this is amazing. And I did not have any registration in my mind that maybe this is not good, Not like for you.
It's a very good question, to be honest. I have to think about it for a moment. Let me say like this. If I was about to walk into a basic pet store from back in the day, and by back in the day, I mean like 10, 15 years ago, the pet stores that we have experienced when we were kids or younger people, the situation is kind of comparable, right? You see all these lizards in glass boxes, maybe on wooden chips, or one light bulb, tiny dish of water. It's not a habitat. It's just basically pet stores are kind of like quarantine centers. You can call it like that. It's just for trafficking animals. And that was kind of how so let's say you could be very skeptical about basically everything that was going on a lot of years ago. Yeah. Sure. And basically, I was seeing this place as more like a distribution center for animals. And I quickly realized that this guy is not really into breeding stuff himself. He had some breeding successes. Yes, I don't want to deny that. But at the end of the day, his idea was just trying to collect the surplus for little money, giving it away for more. And yes, today I have a very different mindset about it. That's why I said if I went into the situation today, I would turn around immediately and don't look back. But at that time, I was so, let's call it impressionable. Yeah, I was so impressed by the fact what this guy is putting his hands on that I was thinking he is doing something right. Yeah. And I had these big ideas in my head. Like I told you, I was really into building my own little rainforest in the garden of my parents' place at the age of, I want to say 14, 15. So this guy was basically doing just that, just not on the level that I would like to do it. But I was feeling like he is a person in this industry that I want to grow into. And I kind of accepted him as my mentor, even though it was definitely not the right guy to trust. Yeah. I was suspicious about him. Yes, but I didn't know anyone better. Yeah. I want to ask you a question, to be honest. When you were growing up in this hobby, did you have somebody to look up to? Did you have somebody who guided you along the way when you were younger?
Many people. Yes. And both good and bad, frankly.
How did you get to know these people?
Various ways. I mean, there were, whether it was through like the local reptile scene, getting to know people who worked at the local shops, reaching out to people who I met either at expos or in I was still of the era where in the early parts of my journey anyway, I would still look in the backs of Reptiles magazine and I would call the people who put their contact information in the back of the magazine.
Really?
For sale. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I would, I mean, there were countless guys. I mean, there were guys I could, various guys who even today where I either I still know them or, maybe I don't talk to them anymore or, whatever, a lot of it came through the local reptile shop, frankly.
Really?
Yeah. But, like my mom, when I was, oh God, I don't know, 7, 8 years old or something, my mom and I went to a friend's house, like a friend of hers, for some get together of some variety. And this guy had a whole mess of Neodecia cages full of various boas. Like he had children's pythons and he had sand boas and he had Dumerils boas and stuff like this. And, getting to know him. I mean, I didn't really get to know him too well, but there were lots of weird little situations like that where just through the grapevine, you meet people who make an impression on you in one way or another. There were people through the local reptile shop who then I ended up meeting people at various zoological institutions by way of those people. I mean, again, there were many good and bad examples of people in the scene, right? And most of the bad ones were people in the shops who were, just not acting in, not acting in good faith or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
So what about you, Roy?
Yeah.
Honestly, for me growing up, I didn't really have a lot of contact with other reptile keepers. I had a little bit, but there wasn't really anyone that I knew like face to face that I looked up to as as a mentor or anything like that. Most of my keeping style and all that stuff was all self-taught, and it was all from reading breeding books and magazines. And into my teenage years, I definitely started to communicate more with people on online forums. And there were a handful of people that I looked up to in those spaces that definitely helped me along the way with certain things. Like I definitely remember one person in particular was his screen handle was a Sight Hunter on the old kingsnake.com forums back in the day. And I think his name was actually Bill. And he kept sulfurious and a bunch of other big, amazing colubrid snakes, which is what I was into at that time. I was interested in neotropical colubrids primarily. And I remember, exchanging emails with him quite a bit and him giving me lots of lots of like insight and just like tips for simple things like how much moisture do you want in your incubation medium? You know, things like that like I didn't know exactly what to strive for. And there's another guy named Nate who lived up in the Northwest who was also interested in the same snakes. And he would talk to me on the phone. You know, we would talk for hours at a time on the phone, just talking about these herps. And, you know, like looking back, I'm like, wow, that's pretty significant, you know, for somebody who's older, you know, to take the time. I'm sure that they were very conscious though. They were like in a mentorship role on some level. That's not really how I thought about it. You know, like I was just a kid, you know, like talking to somebody about reptiles, but I'm sure that they were much more conscious about like, all right, like how can we encourage this young person to, you know, pursue his passion here? Because I was very passionate about reptiles from a very young age and active in my like pursuit of that, especially in like online spaces. So
to be honest, I feel like you two are growing into this role of being these online mentors for a huge amount of probably young people at the moment. And I feel like it's an amazing path to be on. I would like to be a mentor for somebody one day, but I still have to learn a lot before I can identify myself as such. But what you are doing right here, I feel like you are mentoring me in a way. A lot of ethical discussions that you have going on here, and it really gets my mind spinning. And I really to anybody who is listening right now, I feel like they will agree when I say that after listening to an episode of your podcast, you always have some new ideas or some trains of thoughts in your head to think about and to adjust what you're really doing there. So yeah, this whole mentorship topic is one that is really kind of an important thing in my opinion, because when I was growing up, I didn't really have anybody like that. I was just doing this stuff by myself. I was just doing it the best as I could, and it did not really have let's call it an ethical frame around what I was doing, because I was just doing it secretly in my room, in my apartment. And I'm sure that some guidance in a different way would have avoided a lot of stuff that was happening. Yeah, pretty sure about that. Yeah,
sure. I mean, well, I should say that I think I probably speak for Roy too when I say that there's a certain amount of like what goes on the show, like what we talk about here, that really is each of us kind of, you know, we're really like exploring our own questions and our own thoughts about like, I don't know how to answer this question. I don't really know what's next. And I don't know what the right answer is here. I don't know, you know, what I should or shouldn't do in various situations. And, you know, I'm sure. So, you know, something that struck me when Roy was doing the intro is he mentioned that this is episode 45. I mean, I remember when he and I, you know, like, first of all, that's not that many episodes, right? On the one hand, that's not a lot of episodes. On the other hand, most podcasts don't even get past episode 20, right? They just before they fall off. Additionally, I'm willing to wager substantial amounts of money that the way I think about what I'm doing here at episode 45 is different than the way I was thinking about it on episode 2. It's just different, you know, and that's been mostly due to the wonderful people that we get to talk to, like yourself, Ben. And, you know, I should also say that I didn't realize, I think I misunderstood before, and Roy kind of clarified that you were specifically asking about mentors. Like, is that accurate? Okay.
Right.
So
yeah, not only people you get to know, but people who grab you and teach you how to do it properly.
Yes. There's two people that I should cite because I feel bad for kind of leaving them out earlier because it wasn't, I didn't fully understand the question. And the first is going to be my friend Camille Hammers over in the Netherlands. He's always been a good friend to me, and he's always been very responsive. But he came into my life when I was already an adult. He kind of guided me through the first time I ever bred Euromastics and all this other stuff. And that was fucking 11 years ago or something, 12 years ago. I can't even remember now. It was a long time ago. And he's always been very kind and an interesting guiding person in my adult life. But when I was young, from like 8th grade approximately until like when I ended high school, it was actually a bearded dragon breeder named Vicky Dashu, and her husband Rob, they're well-known bearded dragon breeders. I actually say I can't be 100% certain about what they're doing right now. I don't know. I'm sure they're still breeding dragons. I know they were up until a few years ago, but I used to call her every day, every fucking day as a kid, and just ask her questions about dragons and about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And bless her heart, she tolerated my annoying ass phone calls. And I mean, I'm not kidding. When I say there were times when I called her every day, I mean I called her every day. Like Monday through Sunday, I called every day. And you know, it was remarkable that she even put up with that. Now, granted, over the years, I bought lots of dragons from them back in the day, and because that's one of the things that kind of brought me into this world. But you know, it's just funny to think about, because you know, it could have gone a totally different way. There were, you know, I mentioned the local reptile shops. There were guys at the local shops who I remember when I was 16 years old, first time I ever had my driver's license. And I remember driving up to and pulling up to the shop that not only the one that I used to go to get all my feeders, but at the one I used to work when I came of age to be able to work. I remember pulling up to the shop, and the shop had these huge big bay windows up in front, like these huge windows in the front of the shop. And I remember seeing the two guys at the counter turn around from the desk, see that I was the one pulling into the parking lot, and then bolting into the back. Like they just did not want to help me. And whether it was because it was me and I was annoying, or whether it was because they just didn't want to help people, they were sick of dealing with annoying customers all the time. I mean, I don't know. And what's really funny is one of those guys ended up being a friend of mine, you know, but you know, it could have gone that way. It could have been every person involved in this was like, fuck, I don't want to talk to this kid, you know, but instead there were a handful, including Vicky and Camille, who had patience and understanding and had the generosity to offer me their time and their perspective, you know? And so I feel like that sets a great example. So if there's anybody, what you said, Ben, just a minute ago about Roy and I acting as some mentor in some way, shape, or form, that makes me personally a little bit uneasy, because I feel like nobody should copy what the fuck I'm doing. But if there's any,
I'm not sure about that.
Well, but if there's any validity in that, I feel like that credit should be passed on to the people who really set Roy and I up for success in any way, shape, or form. And there are lots of people, sure, not those two, but you know, I mean, it really, those folks, I mean, boy, they deserve an unbelievable amount of credit just for their patience, because I was an annoying little shit. I can promise you that.
On the other hand, it's definitely true what you're saying. On the other hand, I'm pretty sure these people, what was the name of the dragon breeder again?
Rob and Vicky Dashu.
Vicky, she will be proud of what you are doing today, because the hobby is evolving, and I'm pretty sure that today probably you can be I'm not really sure about what they are doing. I don't know anything about them, and I don't want to discredit them in any kind of way, but probably today you can be a better mentor to the young generation than they can be, because you grew up doing it all your life. You've been really into this new style of keeping, probably. I don't want to call it the new school, but you are up to date with all the technology and all the trends that are going on, the ethical discussions and everything. And you've got a lot in you that you can put on the table today. And it's just such a, that's what I really like about the whole, let's call it herpetoculture hobby. Yeah. this connection of the generations. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are old
Yeah.
people teaching younger ones. They are raising the children, trying to teach each other via the Instagram or the expos and everything. And I rarely see a different hobby that I have been involved in where the generations intertwine that way. Yeah, and I really have some experiences myself. And today, one of my really closest friends in like all my life, he's a retiree. I'm not exactly sure how old he is. I want to say 64, and we got to know each other due to the hobby. Yeah, basically a story like you told, Phil, like writing emails, having phone calls daily over some periods of time, meeting in person, going on trips together, and it really grew from a mentorship into I can say a partnership today. Yeah. And that's what's really interesting about the hobby in general, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. I mean, it's sort of a bizarre dichotomy, because on the one hand, I was thinking about this. Okay, yeah, here we go. This is a good way to talk about this. So I do these monthly live Q&A sessions on my Patreon page, where, I do these like big Zoom group calls, and people can just ask questions, and I talk with people about Uromastics and whatever's going on in their life, and and all this other stuff. And I posted one of them on YouTube, and someone went into someone took something I said on the Q&A, went into the Uromastics Club group on Facebook, and was like, Aritz only says you guys are all full of shit and all this other. He just like went crazy, and I was just like, all right, this is good. And and part of the reason I was thinking about this is because it was just, the whole thing was just talking about feeding insects to Uromastics, and how occasionally is probably pretty good. It's not that big of a deal, and nobody should really be sweating it that hard, and whatever. And it was that, coupled with, I made a post on my Instagram about how when a new Uromastics, like a baby, hatches, you give them the poop from the adults, and they eat the poop, and it helps establish their gut microbiome and blah, blah, blah. And someone made a comment on each of those videos saying, oh, hey, like, I really appreciate like this new information you're putting out and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, there's nothing new about, I mean, like literally everything I do, someone else did before me. You know what I mean? Like, I think the single exception of solo housing my animals is like, that's the only difference I've brought to the table, frankly, for the most part, like, I mean, maybe there's other tiny things, but in terms of, and the reason that I feel like this is apt is because, it's not, like, sometimes what really feels like a lot of times the evolution, any kind of progress or advancement in what I'm doing is mostly just about like how I'm thinking about what I'm doing. It's not even about like the exact nitty gritty of the methodology, or like, it doesn't really seem to have anything to do with the lights that I'm using, because I got the same lights that people were using 30 years ago, except for the fact that it's like an Arcadia tube and, whatever. Yeah. For the most part, it's basically the same practice with a few minor upgrades, but like, it's really a lot more in like the sort of like the philosophical approach to when and why and how I do what I do with each individual animal, which I think speaks to what you're saying, Ben. It's like it's
yeah. But don't you think this whole, you call it philosophical aspect of the hobby, we can maybe also call it this ethical view on certain topics. Don't you think it's like a increasingly important topic in what we're doing in general, because of all these, I want to say the criticism in terms of wild-caught animals, which was definitely not really a topic 10 or 15 years ago. All this focusing on breeding, responsible reptile keeping, conservation by breeding programs and everything like that. So I feel like this ethical and philosophical point of view on the topic is getting increasingly important, and maybe you are pioneering in this topic. I don't know. But that's why I really appreciate what you are doing here, because I get a lot of input in this direction.
I definitely think that there's a certain amount of like future focus that seems to be making its way into herpetoculture right now in a way that maybe, I mean, I hesitate to say that it was not present, 35, 40 years ago, because it may have been, right? Like, I don't know what, for all I know, Philippe de Beaujolais was talking about this kind of shit when he was 25, right? I don't know. But
in a different intensity.
Yeah, sure. With a different intensity, with a different through a different lens, with a different framework on what's going on. And I think all that's true, but there definitely seems to be an infusion into modern herpetoculture of not just a forward focus, but also a kind of intellectualism that feels, at least to my eye, feels new, feels the dawn of the internet and social media was an absolute explosion for herpetoculture. I mean, in so many positive and negative ways, right? But I think in many ways the positives really, really outweigh most of the negatives that have come as a result of social media, because now we can have this conversation, and then as many people as can possibly want to can listen and can take away some of the ideas. Like, this is probably a more concise way of saying it. Like, the leverage that can be applied to a particular idea, concept, whatever, in this space is just vastly greater than it used to be.
Definitely.
At 25 years old, Philippe de Beaujolais could have been having the same conversations, but he had to say them in person or phone call conversations or write a book or write an article. And now
nobody's going to get to hear them.
Or at least a tiny percentage. Like the exponential effect of that is a very small power. Whereas when we have Philippe on the podcast, like we did, he's able to blast out that information in a way that it can be to the power of 10, because so many people can take that info and absorb it and internalize it and then use that going forward, spread it themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, there's some timing elements here. I don't know. Yeah, Roy, I feel like you seem like you got some stuff you want to say there.
Oh, no, I mean, I'm fully with, everything that's been said. I think that there's just a way in which, social media, podcasts. Podcasts, I think, are a huge one, because there's so much value to being able to digest in a pretty quick, application, the thoughts and opinions of others, and kind of from there, I think people can kind of distill their own perspectives and then offer them back. And so I think that there's a way in which it's like herpetoculture seems like it's approaching this kind of progressive wave where things are just like the level of discourse is happening at a faster pace. Things are moving more quickly. And I think that in large part, that's to the benefit of the practice, the discipline as a whole. But I also wonder about just, I think that part of what we're experiencing, though, the shadow of that is the conflict is, especially on the kind of advancing side of herpetoculture, if we can call it that, there's, there could be like a wholesale dismissal of those who have come before, of a kind of more old school style of keeping. And I think that there's a more effort that needs to be taken, I think, to like bridging those gaps. And especially, but I think that that feels like a very online phenomenon, because like Ben said earlier, there's such a value to like intergenerational discourse and how that can happen in herpetoculture, and especially, face to face. It's like there's so much that I think can be gleaned for incoming keepers from just like spending time with people who have been doing it for a long time, seeing their facilities, seeing their practices, picking their brains about it, even if they don't, take everything on, there's just a lot of value to experiencing that. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm saying anything novel there, but or contributing much to the conversation other than what you two have already offered. But
Boy, thank you for saying nothing, Roy. Jeez.
Yeah, I know. I'm just rehashing what you already said.
I want to say something in this direction, maybe.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Phil, you said that probably you are just copying what other people do, and there's nothing original about what you're doing, except from this ethical, philosophical side. That's how we got into this conversation here. But to be honest, I feel like in most topics, we are just copying what other people are doing, and I feel like if you want to do something original, you just have to join all of these influences that you have in such a way that you can't even distinguish which influence can be seen right now. So probably there are so many different influences in the style that you are keeping your animals that at the end of the day you make it to your own. And once you have this baseline confidence in what you are doing, you can add this touch of personality, and maybe that's what we are speaking about now, this touch of ethical keeping, and maybe that's what makes it original in your case, in Roy's case, and in mine too.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
For quite some time, I have been not really confident about what I am doing here in general in this hobby, because I was feeling like I am just copying what other people are doing. And but over time, I want to say I have acquired different skills in different topics, not only the vivarium hobby, but also in the maker scene, for example, also in plant keeping, especially also in the zoo style of keeping, maybe. And at the end of the day, combined everything and made it my own. And so today I'm pretty proud of what I'm doing and the way that I'm doing my stuff. But for a long time, I have not really been very confident about the way that I handle my stuff, because it was always kind of important to make my own stuff and to be original. But it took some time to get there, and it's still a learning process.
I think you said several really interesting things there, Ben. And one that I would like to maybe unpack a little bit further is that, this idea of like originality, because this is where I feel like the comparison between art and herpetoculture is really, really useful. I don't believe in originality in a traditional sense, right? Most people think of originality as, well, everybody was doing this one thing, and then so-and-so came around and changed everything, right? And he was, this person, he or she was profoundly original and had so many unique perspectives. And then, the more and more you dig into revolutionary figures, the more you find, they had a unique and diverse set of influences that were maybe just peripheral to or just outside of the norm that they brought into something else. And so
True.
What I used to start when I was teaching art and illustration at Rocky Mountain College of Art and Design, and when I was thinking about my own artwork and like how to grow with it and how to proceed with that, it became really obvious to me that originality doesn't exist. But what we do have, and the closest thing to originality in the way that most people think about it is the sampler, like an audio sampler, right? Mm-hmm. What our brains are really good at is sampling and then recombination, which is fine. Like that's if that's originality, then great. Like that's all we need. I don't need it to be anything more. I don't need it to be divine. I don't need it to be completely unique. Even if the best of originality is the recombination of pre-existing themes from another realm, that's just fine. That's great. And I feel like that's also herpetoculture, right? So this is probably why so often on this podcast we have conversations that seem to drift away from herpetoculture proper and land in areas that resemble philosophy, art and design, ethics, and morality. And I feel like that's probably why those conversations happen, is because those are also other themes that, at least for myself and for Roy and for most of our guests, that's part of their experience too. They're bringing this other thing from that maybe was never a major part, it didn't play a major role in herpetoculture previously in the same way anyway. And now all of a sudden we're bringing it in and mixing it around into the big vat of it's like a mole, mole, that is? Yeah, Roy knows it. Ben, do you know what mole?
No.
Mole is it's like a sauce. It's like a sauce. It's really, I think it originates in Mexico, and it's it's just like a mixture. I mean, like, Roy,
I can imagine. Yeah, okay.
How would you describe mole?
I mean, I think of it as like a Oaxacan kind of, almost like a chocolatey kind of thick, delicious sauce that makes everything better.
And it's just, but it isn't like a defining feature of mole that it's like, it's like sort of like the same base, but every one is unique, and there's like some slight variations in the way.
Definitely.
You almost never, like, you never remake it. It's just it's like a pot that you put stuff in and you never fully empty the pot, and you just
this 1,000-year-old soup, kind of like that.
I think that's sorry.
Oh, I was just going to offer that something that's coming to mind for me with this conversation is something we spoke on early on in the show. I think maybe in our episode with Ron, which was our third episode, maybe.
Yeah.
But this notion that it's something I heard from a storyteller named Martin Shaw, but basically that like the genius emerges from the margins.
Yeah.
And that, like, if you're looking in like folklore and mythology and tales and stuff like that, very often when things are in time of crisis or when they're in time of stagnation, the upheaval and the kind of like generative force often emerges from like the side, the edges of the discourse. And I think that that's something that I feel like is happening in herpetoculture right now, because herpetoculture is growing so rapidly, it's becoming more mainstream. There are people entering into herpetoculture that have totally different skill sets and totally different worldviews and totally different perspectives. And like they didn't grow up keeping reptiles. Like they got their first reptile when they were in their 30s or their 20s or whatever, because they were bored during COVID and were like, oh, I want to make a terrarium, and then, but these people, I think that sometimes these people have like, they have other skill sets that then they can apply and they can offer to herpetoculture. And I think that this is something that I see in your offering to herpetoculture is like you have, and I want to pick your brain about this a little bit, but like you have a unique skill set, like you said, as a maker, as a creator. You also have experience with other fauna that you've kept in captivity. You also have insight into like plant care and greenhouse care. And so in all of this, what you're offering to herpetoculture, it is a fresh spin, on something that on like these kind of disparate disciplines and interests. And so I'm curious if you could speak a little bit about that, just like what you're trying to do. It's like, for me on the outside looking in, I feel like I see it and I'm like, okay, I like what I see here. This is fun and different and interesting. And anyway,
I like to hear that. Yeah. So I think I want to add like one or two sentences to what we have been speaking about prior, and then I will maybe keep going.
Yeah, of course.
I think this originality comes from mainly it comes down to experiences and exposure, to different topics. And that's why I think also traveling is so important, because you are exposed to a completely different world, different impressions, and after even a little travel, or probably also a bigger one, I'm always so full of ideas about stuff that I have seen or that I have lived through, that I think it's really about the experiences that you gain while you are out there in the world, and then you can reapply them to what you are doing at home. And later on in this discussion, maybe not right now, I would like to get back to my traveling experiences, which are immediately linked to the animals that I'm keeping at the moment. And these were my most valuable and influential experiences that I've gained over the last years, for sure. And it took place just a couple of months ago. And I can really recommend anybody out there listening to go to the habitat of the animals that you're keeping at the moment. But maybe let's make a step back to what I am doing and the way that I'm doing my stuff. So we've been talking about my journey in life, and the last point that we've been at was like I was getting into flipping animals and making a little bit of money on the side. And sooner or later, everything came to an abrupt end. Yeah, we can say it was a big confiscation that was happening at my place. It was a long-lasting police investigation, and after that, a criminal process that was going on for 3 years before I have been sentenced to my before I have been finally sentenced, I can say like that. And within these time frame of the big confiscation, so the stop of my animal keeping and the all of the things that were going on back then, and the final sentencing, there were 3 years of me going through kind of an identity crisis, because all of this, the main motor in my life was kind of taken away from me. I was still studying back in the day, and I were helping out in a sports club, and I was really into volleyball, so sports at that time. So I still had something in my life, but the animals, so what I was really passionate about, it was just taken away from me. So in this time, there was still this kind of creative mind in me who wanted to get something going again. And for me, I was pretty sure that I was not going to get into animals again, not anytime soon. And I was not really interested in doing anything that has to do with nature or wildlife, or by wildlife I also mean plants, because it's also wildlife.
Right,
so I was not really into this at all, and so I picked a new passion for myself, and it was this maker scene. So it was the first time that I really got into building little projects, electronic projects, 3D printing, maybe also woodworking, laser cutting with acrylic and everything like that. And so I took a long break from herpetoculture or animal care in general. I moved to a new city, tried to set up a whole new life, tried to get my mind back, tried to get out of this crippling depression, you can say. And I was focused on building stuff that kind of brings joy to my life. So I can remember one of the first projects that I've been working on was building an electronic skateboard. So like a skateboard with a battery pack underneath, a little motor controller, and a motor connected to the back wheel, and you can adjust the speed with a hand remote. So this was one of the first DIY projects that I have been really working on, and from that on, I joined a local club. They call it a makerspace, or Fab Lab, hackerspace. You can also say. It's like a club where you can pay a monthly fee, and you can use all these industrial machines like 3D printers, laser
Wow.
cutters, CNC machines, woodworking stations, and even you can build your own PCB boards and everything. And I was really,
Wow.
really busy in spending my free time in this makerspace and gaining experiences in building stuff that have to do with electronics and fancy little 3D printed or laser cut parts. Yeah, so this was what I was going to at the time when I was not keeping any animals. And sooner or later, this passion was kind of starting to come back into my life, but I didn't allow myself to keep animals, yeah, because
Mhm.
this investigation was still going on and my future was very uncertain, let's call it that way.
Mhm.
And so I was getting into plants, yeah, because that's the next logical step that you can reach out to. Yeah, no animals allowed. Okay, let's
Mhm.
build a habitat for plants. Yeah. And the first thing that I really started to build, and the first thing that I was sharing on my Instagram that I started back in the day, were these little eternal vivariums. Yeah, you know, when you like have a
Mhm.
glass vase or a big glass box, and you have the airtight lid, you put some moss, some plants, some soil in there, and you just let it grow. Yeah, just let it go wild.
Yeah.
And that was what I was getting really interested in, building these beautiful aesthetic little terrarium installations. Yeah, and then I was kind of trying to combine this whole thinker mentality with these little vivariums. So I was cutting these laser cut uh, acrylic glass lids with some ventilation holes and a computer controlled ventilation and timing and everything. And I was trying to build these miniature habitats, basically these self-sustaining
Mm.
habitats. And so, yeah, that was when I got back into the vivarium hobby, you can say, started my Instagram, and also had some time, I want to say like maybe a year or year and a half of reflection about all of this stuff that was going on in my former life. And I got back to the hobby with a new mindset. And
Mm.
yeah, on the way, I pretty early on, I got to know Flo and Till, the guys who are now making up the Greenhouse Boys. Yeah, our little
Yeah.
community of guys who are really into building habitats and taking care of plants. And we have been a really amazing influence to each other about different topics, because each one of us has different experiences, different skill set that we can bring to the table. And so from that point on, I got really interested in keeping these exotic plants and focusing more on the nutrition cycle, understanding how does a habitat or how does a biotope work. Yeah, what's up with these nutrition of the of plants, soil. What is even going on in the soil? How does the water behave and everything? And so back in the day, I was really into these rare animals. This is the most expensive, most rare, crazy animal. But I really distanced myself from this point of view, and now I was really getting into, oh, let me see how I can replicate this habitat and how I can apply my skills of these little machines and everything that I've learned along the way to build this habitat. And sooner or later, it grew into this. Okay, I can now have an understanding for these amazing animals that are out there, and now I can also kind of build these habitats. Maybe I can build a habitat for one of the most amazing animals in the world. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, and this whole maker game, it's really a big part of what I'm doing today. Yeah, and I think it's a
Mm.
very interesting hobby and I can really recommend to anybody out there to get into 3D printing, laser cutting, or just looking out if there's a makerspace around you that is offering machines that you can
Hmm.
explore and develop your skill set. Yeah.
I I wanted to maybe ask a little bit more about like how all of the the investigation
hmm
and all of that um like how did that affect your mind, and like what did you learn from that? Like what were some of the what was that sort of like experientially for you, and how did you, I mean, because I feel like a lot of people could have had an experience like that and then just been like, fuck it, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the fact that you were able to take it as a learning experience and then build off of it and say, all right, fine, I'm just gonna, you know, I had this thing, I learned from it, and now I'm gonna go this other direction. Does that, I don't know if that question makes sense.
The question kind of makes sense, yes. And it's a really extremely, let's call it, it was an extremely painful experience.
Yeah.
Yes. And there was no, I cannot say that there is, that I see it like, okay, it happened, but yes, now I'm fine again. I'm just getting back into it. That's definitely not how it went. It was close to destroying my life, to be honest. And for years, and by years, I mean like 3 years, I was like, basically, I was thinking about it, about what happened basically like every day. And it was really possible that I will have to spend a couple of years in prison. And so if there's something like that going on against you and you have no influence about what the outcome is going to be like, and you have no possibility to speed up the process, and you have no idea when the final result is being delivered to you, it's eating up your life. I can really say that. And today I'm really lucky that I'm in the position that I'm in right now, and it could have gone very different way, and I'm extremely grateful for how everything turned out. Yeah. So it's not only that the animals were taken away from me. Yeah, that was terrible, because I was really, so yeah, okay, let me say like this. I was doing this animal flipping, yeah, but wasn't really doing it for making money. I was making a couple of $100 every other month or whatever. That was okay as a student, that's okay. But I was really always into building my own collection by doing what I'm doing. So I was making all of these contacts to private keepers all over Europe, zoos, private animal. How do you say? We differentiate between zoos, which are state-owned, and the private parks. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So I was getting to know these private parks, zoos, private breeders, but also other people who are into trading animals, and not only in Europe, but also out of Europe. And I was kind of really into this connecting myself, because I always wanted to achieve this goal of working with this one species that was always my dream. I want to ask you guys, what's your go-to if you were only able to keep one animal? Which species would it be? Do you have one?
Fuck. Oh,
only one. It doesn't matter if it's possible or no.
Oh, you mean like just anywhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say a blue whale is maybe out of the box, but something like that.
So for me, it's either going to be Fiji crested iguana or Naltinus,
really?
or on the Naltinus gecko. Yeah.
You know, my guys Till Flo and me, we always joke about the Fiji iguana as the gay lizard.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they are fucking gay.
Love them.
Look at them.
I love them, dude. I just love them. I think they're great. Like, let's go, dude. Like, yeah, okay. I'm down. I don't know what it is about them. There's something about those iguanas in particular, that I find really captivating. Sure. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's just if there's like one thing, you know, if it was, you know, or maybe, you know, Sarah Asmusai or Loricata or something like that. You know,
I know somebody very influential who has the same opinion about the Saras. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Really?
But what about you, Roy?
I honestly don't even know. It's so hard to answer.
Really?
I mean, yeah, it's hard for me to answer. Maybe it would be a like Brazilian, an Atlantic slope locality of Spilotes sulphureus. down there they have these incredible ones that like they're just blood red and black and orange banded, and they're unattainable within herpetoculture being in that region of Brazil. So
Why so?
maybe
What
that is
makes them
one thing that
unattainable?
comes to mind. Well, I mean, unattainable by legal means, I guess I should say, because Brazil doesn't allow any export.
Mhm. Are they common in
And
nature?
yeah, they're pretty common, I think, where they're from.
So how far
But
would you go to get some?
not very far. I wouldn't break any laws to get some, that's for sure.
Okay.
I mean,
Very good.
I think that yeah, but those, I mean, they're probably up there for me. But honestly, I feel like a lot of the species that like I really want to be working with, I'm working with. I feel pretty fortunate in that regard. Maybe it's just a lack of imagination on my part, though.
Yeah, so I can really identify with what you said there, Roy, because these pilotes, they are not in captivity really. Yeah, but you would like to keep them, but you wouldn't break any law. I like that. For me, it's my idea about the most amazing animal that you can possibly work with. It's the slow loris. These little lemurs. Yeah, these nocturnal primates. They are very slow, pretty small, like a rat, like the size, or like a guinea pig, the size. Yeah. I was fascinated by them for years and years, and when I was getting into this animal flipping, animal trading, I was basically always, and by always I mean always speaking to everybody that was connected. I was speaking to them about the slow loris, and I was always asking, "Oh, do you know if there is anybody out there keeping them? Do you know if it's somehow possible to get some?" However, yeah, and over years and years, basically there was no sign of light at the end of the tunnel. And this guy who was really, we called him Bill, right? This guy, Bill, he was basically the only guy who told me, "Oh, yes, I know it's kind of possible. There's some guy in the deep Czech Republic who's keeping some. Maybe I can make a contact, whatever." And over the time, I was really more interested in this possibility of getting my hands on some slow loris. I was more interested in this than in this guy Bill at the end of the day. But I was keeping our connection up and going in order for him to give something back to me in form of contact or whatever. And yeah, I was really hoping to find a way to get my hands on them and to work with them at the end of the day. Today, I look at it like a very selfish way of thinking about this whole topic, because to me, it was important that I can get my hands on them and that I can be working with them. I was not really thinking about what I can do for the animals. Yeah, if there's anything that I can do to help the animals themselves. Yeah, and it was really the wrong mindset. But there was no I want to say mentor around me to push me into the right direction, because this guy Bill, he had definitely not a great influence on me. And so sooner or later, I decided that the only way to get my hands on these animals is to go to where they come from. Yeah. And Roy, you said you are not gonna cross some boundaries in terms of legal problems, but I was ready for it. And this passion, or this maybe this need or this want to work with these animals was so strong that I booked a direct flight to Thailand, yeah, and spent some time over there. And yeah, and do you want me to continue the story?
Oh yeah,
oh yeah. If you're willing.
Yeah. Because I have to be a little bit careful about it. But at the end of the day, I was sentenced. Yeah, and all of this story was part of the investigation too, so I can speak openly about it. And let's say that I have been there not only once. Yeah, That's what I can legally say. Okay. And in my first time when I have been to Thailand, I have printed. Back in the day, it was the time where just smartphones were getting a thing, but I was not really comfortable with using mobile data outside of the Germany. So I was basically offline when I arrived in Thailand. So I tried to prepare myself by printing a piece of paper. I still have it today. Printing a piece of paper with the Thai translation of "I am looking for slow loris" and a black and white picture printed. So I went to this Chatuchak weekend market. You know this? It's I think it's the biggest open air market in the whole world. And there's this giant animal section, and you can buy it. You can say you can basically buy everything there, but over time the restrictions were getting more and more harsh, so it's not really possible to buy these extremely endangered animals anymore. Monkeys are not really openly displayed in anything and everything like that, but sharks in aquariums are just a common thing over there and stuff like that. And so I went to this market on my 10-day Thailand trip. I went there like the first 3 days in a row, always walking around shop to shop or stand to stand and asking people, "Hey, can you help me? I want to buy loris." And the people the people over there, of course, they know it's not legal. Yeah, it's a native animal and it's highly protected. So they were always showing me this sign. And how would you interpret when a Thai person shows you this sign?
You'd be like, "No,
hell no."
It's the "you will be locked up" sign.
This is disqualified.
It's a handcuff sign.
Uh-huh.
But I was waving money. I was saying, "Hey, I'm really serious about it." So after like 3 days of walking around the weekend market, there was a little lady, 50 years old, maybe like this high, maybe just 1.50 meter lady. She said, come, like this. And so she told me I have to follow her. So I followed her along all these little trenches in this market. And sooner or later, we came to a little shop. And there was a young lady. She was presenting me a little pygmy loris, slow loris.
Wow.
And then I was saying, okay, interesting, it's for sale, okay, how much? And then she was typing something in the calculator, then she was deleting it, doubling it, showing me again. So she was just raising the price because she knew that I was young and stupid. So we agreed on the deal, and I basically bought a slow loris on the Chatuchak weekend market in Thailand. On the 3rd day of my trip, or let's say on the 4th day of my trip, I'm not really sure. I went back on the 11th day, maybe something like that, or 12th day. So I have been traveling around Thailand with this little loris in my backpack, hand feeding it every day because it was crazy. So I've been traveling around Thailand with this little loris, and at the end of the day, it came to the big day where I had to go back to Germany, and I was not terribly prepared, but not amazingly prepared. I had this little contraption that I can put in between my legs. It was a piece of acrylic that I melted in the oven, and then I formed it around my balls and between my legs to make this perfect mold. It was like the size of a fist, and I surrounded it with some, basically like a sock. Yeah, you can imagine like a contraption, like a U-form acrylic piece and a sock around it, and it was connected to my legs with some shoelaces, and that way I could store the animal between my legs. Wow. And I had to go through the security control at the airport. Yes, and it was stupid, but I made it. I'm not proud of it, but I came through. But to be honest, I have been there multiple times, and 2 times it. Oh, I have to be careful. um, it almost went wrong, and it almost went wrong another time. I can say it like that.
How did
Because I was thinking that I was really well prepared, because I was going through this whole maneuver in my head a lot of times. I was even practicing how to walk with my contraption. Can you say contraption, or did I make up this word?
yeah.
Okay,
That's a good word.
I tried to practice how to walk with my contraption without looking suspicious, and I think that was not going to be the problem. But I was a little bit afraid about the metal detector, yeah, at the airport, because if there's some kind of metal detected on your body, you will be touched all over your body, and that was for sure going to be the end. Yeah, so I've been very careful about what I was wearing. I was wearing one simple T-shirt, like a I Love Thailand tourist T-shirt. I wanted to be like this obvious tourist. Yeah, so I was wearing this I Love Thailand T-shirt and these huge, these hippie pants, these baggy pants that the Asian tourists always wear. Yeah, these with huge space between your legs and everything like that. No metal, no nothing. And I was walking through the security device and the metal detector at the airport, and I was beeping. And I was like, oh my God. And what went wrong was actually I had still the camera in my pocket, because I was I was not really, I don't want to say that I was extremely nervous, but I was on some kind of auto mode. I was not really thinking about what I was doing. I was just playing it back, how I practice everything, and I just forgot my camera in my pocket. So there's this guy who was doing the security scan. He told me, "Oh, there's something in your pocket. Here, check this." So I removed my camera, went through the metal detector again. No detection of anything, so I was allowed to pass. Yeah, and that way I was able to enter the plane. Fell asleep immediately because there was such a big rush of adrenaline and everything. And I woke up shortly prior to the landing in Germany, and then there's still this one gate of the how do you say, where you have to declare everything?
Customs.
Yeah, the customs. So I went through the green way, and nobody did any control on me, so I was fine. I came back home, and suddenly I was responsible for this Loris. Yes, so I think I did that at the age of 20 or 21. I'm really not exactly sure, but I think let's say 21.
Wow.
But after that, I was like even in a bigger misery, because now I had this one single animal. And what am I going to do with one animal? So I told myself that the only logical way to keep doing what I'm doing is to do it again. So I did it again. And the next time, the problem was the airports were changing the way they did the security scans. Yeah. And back in the day, the metal detectors, that was the common way to be scanned, right? But today they have these full body scans where you have to stand with your arms and legs stretched out, and they do like this automatical scan future thing. And the Bangkok airport was switching from the metal scanners to the full body scanners, and so when I was going to the security scan, they tried to push me into the full body scan, but both was available, the metal scanner and the full body scanner. So I was pretending that I forgot something. I got out of the queue again, got into the queue again, and after that was directed into the metal scanner, and that way I made it through again. And yeah, so that way I got my hands on some slow Loris with no documentation, no paperwork, no nothing. Yeah, and I felt like, okay, I have decided for the path of doing it the illegal way. So because once you own these animals, or once you have these animals in your care, there's no way to legalize them. Yeah, they are CITES 1. You need these yellow CITES documents and microchip and origin. You need the the documents of the parents, animals, and everything like that. And it's just not possible to legalize them. So I was thinking, okay, my future looks like, okay, I'm just going to hide what I'm doing. Yeah. And I'm going to do it secretly. But I was not really thinking about how it's going to turn out the long way, because life is long, as I said in the beginning of the podcast. And how do you want to hide something that you are deeply passionate about for a lifetime?
Right.
It's just stupid. Yeah. So I was building this collection of my privately owned lorries. Yes. And at the same time, flipping these animals just to make more contacts and to hopefully get my hands on some legal animals one day. And my whole journey came to an end because a guy from the Czech Republic, he told me, okay, I have these 2 dwarf crocodiles. Yeah, the Osteolamus. You know them? These tiny crocodiles.
Yeah.
He had 2 males, and he told me, oh, can you maybe find somebody who's willing to take one of my males, because they are fighting all the time, whatever, I have to get rid of one. So I was doing that. I was just posting an ad online, and there were already some investigations going on, and somehow they have tracked my ID to this ad of this crocodile. Yeah, and I was living in the city center, and it was kind of the reason for the investigation or the confiscation at my place was because they told that I am putting the public in danger by bringing a crocodile into the city center. Yeah, so that's why they opened the door. That's how they were legally able to open up my door, and by doing so, they didn't find the crocodile because it was not at my place, but they found everything else. Yeah. Wow. And then there was a confiscation going on, not only of all the animals that were at my place, but also basically everything that you confiscate in a criminal case. So it was my phone, laptop, bank documents, cash money, everything, a hard drive, USB sticks, navigation system, everything that is kind of important to you. Yeah. And once this happened, I want to say I quickly realized that I was on the wrong path. Yeah. I've been on the wrong path for a long time, and I was never really honest to myself about it. But the pain started at that point, and it lasted for years. Yeah. What do you think about it?
Wow. I mean, it's pretty stunning to hear, I guess that it also really, for me, I can really feel youth, you were young, in the story. It's hard for me to imagine doing something like that now in my life, but thinking back to how I was when I was 20, it makes more sense to me. It's like, wow, yeah, I think that I don't know that I would have done that, but I don't even know if I would have thought to try and do that. But also, it's like having had the experiences you did with this character Bill, and all of those experiences, it makes sense that felt like a very viable thing to do, to achieve this dream of yours.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
You can really say that it was my big project that I was working on. Still to this day, I'm really into thinking in projects. Yeah. I want to build this amazing setup. I want to breed this amazing animal, whatever. It's always a project to me. And this was also the Asian journey. It was a project to me. And I felt like, okay, which steps do I have to overcome to make this project successful? That was kind of how I was thinking about it. So I had to figure out, okay, where can I get my hands on an animal like that? How do I speak to the people? How do I prepare the contraption for in between my legs? How do I try to behave at the airport. That was all of these steps that I was going through. And maybe my mind was not busy enough with important topics, but I was really diving deep into this mindset of, okay, I want to be successful in what I'm doing there and nobody else is doing it. And it was crazy. Yeah. I was really, maybe it's right to say that it was kind of crazy at that time. My mind was definitely not right. Yeah. And also when we come back to this mentor topic, I told this guy, Bill, that I did it for the first time and he didn't hold me back to do it again. And I even told him that, I have booked another flight. And he said, what are you going to bring? Like that. And it was really, and that's why I was thinking about this mentor topic, and we were speaking about this mentor topic so much. I think it is so important to have somebody by your side who you can reflect your thoughts with, and you can try to, everybody has his own opinion. Yeah. And the truth is never, nobody really knows the truth, but it's always somewhere in the middle. And you need to have people who try to move you into the right direction. And I didn't really have somebody like that at that point. And
there's something
insane.
There's something about just like having somebody that can even just ask you the right question.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes that's all it takes. Like I remember, you know, in my kind of mid-20s, I kind of finally fell into like a community of people where I had mentors. And it wasn't within herpetoculture, it was more within like a naturalist's skills realm. So I was learning you know, things more about like my local native ecology, but I just remember the value, like being so struck by how amazing it was to be asked good questions. You know, like I had never been asked questions like that up until that time in my life. It was like I was in my mid-20s before I really had people asking me things that were challenging me to think in a different way, to think more deeply, consider things more deeply. And especially, I think, you know, for young men like ourselves, you know, our brains aren't fully developed, you know, I guess until we're 26 or something like that. And I think, you know, our risk assessment, just generally as a class of people, men in their early 20s have very poor risk assessment. You know, there's a there's a very an oft repeated statistic about people who are bitten by rattlesnakes in North America, and it's like something like 90% of bites are, I'm making this up, but it's something like this, like a huge percentage of bites are men in their early 20s under the influence of alcohol. You know, it's like a hold my beer, watch this, and then they end up in the hospital, you know. And so it seems like I can just like really like see like your humanity, you know, and being like a young person feeling invincible and like having like this like crazy dream and goal and just being like, I'm going to do this, whatever it takes. And then finding yourself like on the other end being like, holy shit, what have I done?
It's I mean, of course I'd be lying if I didn't say I had periodic aspirations towards something similar. You know, I mean, it was, you know, there were definitely plenty of times in my you know, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago where I thought about stuff like that. I'm like, well, I bet you could get away with X or Y, you know, and for me, it you know, the calculus never added up. I never actually committed to anything other than just fantasizing about it. And, you know, I also had this moment of recognizing there were some folks who I spent a lot of time with, you know, who I saw kind of bending boundaries and making decisions that I felt were like maybe didn't line up with the things they said that they valued, you know, and I started getting to the point where I was like, look, I don't have any fucking time for this shit anymore. Like I say that in the sense that, like, and again, none of this is intended to be critical towards you, Ben, at all, but I got to a point where I was really, really sick of people saying one thing and doing another, saying that they're going to be, like that they would act in accordance to this. And then I would literally watch them take more than they said that people should, or joke about legal loopholes or whatever. And I'm like, man, I can't fucking do this. This is, like it, an analogy for me would have been, there was a time where I was participating in downhill longboarding, right? And that's an insanely risky sport. You're flying down the hill, flying down a hill on a piece of wood, wheels on it. No brakes. Flying down the hill on a piece of wood with wheels on it. And as fun as it was, I remember realizing as I started getting up into like the 35 and 40 mile an hour range, I was like, fuck this, dude. If I crash once, I couldn't do the things that I want to do. Right. Which is, I couldn't do jujitsu. It could screw up my ability to draw and paint. And the same kind of calculus happened when I got around people who maybe, weren't doing things. Like I knew a dude who was keeping sidewinders in his closet, and I'm like, fuck, dude, come on, like it. And that's not even that big of a deal at the end of the day. I mean, it's not legal, but it's not even that big. It's just nothing,
There's
like
a saying, it says your second life starts when you realize you only have one.
Yeah.
I really see a lot of truth in that.
I love that. And it was just always this realization that, like, look, I want to do this thing. I want to keep these reptiles and I want to make a living with it. And I want to do it for the rest of my life in some capacity or another. I don't want to take any chance to make it so I can't do that anymore, but again, it would be bullshit if I tried to say that it never crossed my mind. Of course it did, dozens of times, where I was like, I could probably get away with this, and that was it, but it's not hard for me to imagine the right set of circumstances that led me down a different path. It's not hard to imagine at all.
Yeah, a lot of circumstances overlapped, so that was the result of it all. I was really in more or less intensive contact with different zoos in Germany, in Europe, even state zoos. Yeah, so and a lot of times, even these official institutions, they were okay with not being super strict about the paperwork that we're handing out and everything. So it was a longer process of getting accustomed to the fact that all this paperwork stuff is not always very important. And over time, everything added up. And at the end of the day, I felt like it's kind of okay to do what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, and still to this day, I know it's a big issue in the hobby in general. A lot of people, they are not reporting their animals to the government. Yeah, and I'm really interested in how the situation is like in the United States. So, which process do you have to go through with the animals that are listed on CITES and animals that are probably not, but maybe you have to report them anyways? I don't know.
It just depends. It depends on the animals, like some animals, if they're CITES 1, they can't be sold across state lines. If they're here, you can gift them to people inside your state. You can get a captive bred wildlife permit, which apparently Fish and Wildlife isn't really honoring anymore. They're not really handing them out. They're not really making it possible for people to get them. In each state varies in the kind of regulation that they put down on you. So some states, as you know, like Florida, for example, has some pretty stringent regulations around if you're a reptile keeper, what kind of reptiles you're keeping, what kind of reporting you have to do. Some states, Texas, Idaho, other ones just have they, for the most part, just don't give a shit what you're keeping and what you're doing. State, Colorado here, they have concerns around what you're keeping that fall within like latitude, longitude lines that they say that they enforce, but don't really get enforced in whole or in part, because you have animals that technically fall outside those designations that exist in all the reptile shops here locally. And yet we have a governing body called PACFA that comes around and licenses anybody who is a breeder or large seller of these animals, and they license you and will punish you if you don't meet a certain set of requirements. I mean, it's a very, very hairy process, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So both of you guys, you are licensed for the animals that you are keeping at the moment?
I am, yeah.
And you are
I'm not. There's no.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I was just asking, are you reporting every single individual that you have in your collection, and also the offspring? Do you have to report them in a very short time frame after the birth, or how does it look like?
So it's just whole batch stuff. So I have to report how many animals I produced here every year, any animals that died, any animals that required veterinary attention. I have to meet certain standard requirements, like all the floors here in my facility have to be concrete and sealed. I can't use any water, I can't use any shelving or material that can absorb water. So it can't be wood. It has to be metal or plastic or, whatever, sealed something. I have to keep logs of my UV, the output of my UV lights. I have to have a contingency plan for inclement weather or natural disasters, this sort of thing. Yeah, but I mean, it's pretty minimal, honestly. It's not really that it's not much. And it's like I think it's like $275 every year for my license. And it's a two-way street. It's designed to protect consumers and breeders, right? But it is relatively complicated. I have to use the restroom real quick. You guys keep this ball rolling.
Yeah. So the CITES 1 animals are not allowed to be. Sorry, one question. The CITES 1 animals are not allowed to be transported over state lines. Is that true?
I believe that's right. Yeah, exactly.
But there are a lot of animals that fall under this category, right? Maybe they are not as popular in the States, but here in Europe, it's not super uncommon.
I think it's pretty uncommon for people to have CITES 1 animals in the States. I mean, not entirely. It's not like unheard of or anything like that, but there's not a lot of trade in them that I'm aware of. Because of the obstacles of doing so in a legal fashion and in a profitable fashion. Where I am, so I'm in the state of California, and I don't have to do any sort of permitting or anything like that for the species that I'm keeping. I think that if you're producing at a certain commercial level, you might have to, and or if you're wanting to work with species like venomous species, for example, you would have to apply for specialized permits, and those would be very hard for a private keeper to obtain. I think that I don't know of any private keepers personally that have those kinds of permits here. I think that those are pretty much restricted to zoological facilities and institutions. So it's different from state to state for sure.
And you are getting around without any kind of reporting at the moment?
Yeah, there's nothing for me.
None of your animals are listed on CITES?
No.
Really? Oh, lucky you. Yeah, lucky you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it makes the whole process more difficult if you are working with CITES animals, and if you have to go through this process of reporting and being licensed and being controlled, maybe being visited by the I don't know, conservation or veterinary office, something like that. But at the end of the day, it's not a bad thing. So sometimes I was wishing that this whole process of managing animal collections was more digitalized, because here you have to report all of the animals that are on CITES, yeah, but you have to go to your government with a piece of paper, and it's never really safe to know that the origin of this piece of paper is legit. Yeah, so I know that there are a lot of documents around that don't have a proper fundament, yeah, don't have a proper base of legal origin. And I'm really hoping the whole system will develop into a fully digitalized project process where you can send the animals of legal origin from one person to the other, and in some kind of an app or an online program to, I don't know, avoid all of this fraud that is going on. Because even if you are a customer who is not thinking anything bad, it's possible for you to acquire animals that are not of legal origin, and somebody just writes a piece of paper for you, puts some name and signature on it, and you hope for the best. And maybe you're going to run into a confiscation sooner or later. And you don't have to have a bad intention about what you're doing to be to have a problem at the end of the day.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that one thing that we do see a fair amount, in herpetoculture still here is trade of species that are clearly illegally, smuggled, or particularly, I think that U.S. Fish and Wildlife has been increasingly cracking down on species from Mexico in recent years. Like Abronia is a classic example. There was a huge issue with Abronia being illegally smuggled in, and they actually have kind of. There's been I think there's an ongoing investigation involved with that, but it seems different, definitely, in Europe, the way that things go with CITES, and the kind of, it just seems like a more active conversation, I guess, than what I perceive here a lot of the time.
Yeah, back in the day, I've been really into looking how animal trafficking is going on in different parts of the world. And there are also a lot of I want to say pages or websites where you can buy exotic wildlife in the United States, of course. Yeah. Like platforms. Yeah. And I was seeing a lot of endangered animals being offered there, like even monkeys in, how do you say, these poo-poo bags for baby kids?
Oh, diapers.
Diapers, baby monkeys in diapers and stuff like that. And I was always wondering how this can even be possible. If there must be some kind of authorities standing behind animals like that. But obviously there are different standards out there. Yeah, because stuff like that is, I want to say it's not going on here. You can never say never, but it's nothing that is actually going on here. Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that that isn't going on where I am. I couldn't go to the pet store and see baby monkeys in diapers, that kind of thing. But if I go to a different state, maybe when I was a child, for example, I remember going to a pet store in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and they had monkeys in diapers in the pet store for sale.
Crazy. It's insane.
And you would never see that in California. But that's another thing that's just so unusual about the US, is that things can just vary so drastically. I mean, it's similar to being in different countries, in certain parts of Europe. It's like the states sometimes feel like, especially with how massive the United States is, it can feel very different going to different regions.
Yeah. Also in Asia, it's a completely different game. Yeah. In
of course.
Asia, the situation is insane. Yeah. Back in the day, I've really been into these Facebook groups. Today, they are not even available anymore. But these Facebook groups, they were a thing years ago. When I was doing what I was doing, a lot of stuff was handled in Facebook groups. And
Oh yeah.
when I was looking into Facebook groups in Indonesia or Malaysia or something like that, it was insane. Everything that is alive was for sale. If somebody
Wow.
can go into the forest and grab a baby rhino, you can find a baby rhino for sale. It was insane. Yeah.
That's so wild.
And back in the day, I was really fascinated by the idea of owning something. And I think that's a major mistake in the mindset that I had back then. Back then, I was thinking that owning something makes you a better person or makes you more a desirable person or is an achievement to own something. Today, I feel like you really have to work hard for the privilege to be able to tell yourself that you are allowed to own something. I think you have to do a lot. You have to add a lot of value to the community or to the habitat of the animals or to any kind of welfare to be allowed to own to say that it's okay for you to own something. And yeah, maybe it's a better idea to try to bring value first, and after that, allow yourself to own something. Yeah. For example, I would like to quickly talk a little bit about some travel experiences that I had.
Yeah, please.
Maybe that's kind of interesting too, because I was always really fascinated in this Southeast Asian vibes.
Yeah.
And it's also where the lures come from. So last year I went to Vietnam, yeah, and I booked a holiday time for like 2.5 weeks or so, and I was connected to a conservation program for endangered primates in Vietnam. It's called the Endangered Primate Rescue Center. And so I went there. I arrived in Hanoi, Vietnam, and next day I went to this national park. It's called the Cuc Phong National Park, and the center is right next to it. It's right inside of the national park, you can say. And my plan was just to visit this institution for a day or so and to, I don't know, to speak to some people. But at the end of the day, it turned out that it was possible for me to add some value to this program. So I stayed there for the whole amount of my holiday time. I went there on my second day of my Vietnam trip, and on the day of my flight back to Germany, I left the park and I spent all of my time with them. And I feel that's like the way better way of getting into keeping or fascination of some animals. Go to the habitat first, try to add some value to whatever is going on there, and I don't know, try to support the wildlife itself. And after that, you gain so many experiences that you can come back home. You can apply the experiences to whatever you are doing at home, and maybe after that, it's okay for you to get into keeping an animal yourself. Maybe that's the way you should look at it. Add value to the conservation of the animal or the habitat first. After that, get into the animal at your own place, because you'll learn so much along the way, and you're definitely going to be a better keeper once you have been to the habitat first. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that there's often like distinctions made about like people who do it for the money versus people who do it for the animals, you know, and in herpetoculture, it's kind of almost like a trope at this point. And yet there, even those who, you know, would say that they're doing it for the animals, very few of them actually have done anything like what you just described, of like actually going to the native range, you know, seeing how you could lend yourself to conservation, you know, positive action there. And I love that. I mean, I think that, yeah, I can only see how that would be an enriching experience, you know, both in terms of like your personal growth and development, but also like within your practice of herpetoculture.
Definitely. Yeah, and just from my personal experience, I'm pretty sure that everybody who is who has some kind of skills to offer, you can join a conservation program and you can try to add some value in any kind of way, even if you only spend a day or two at this place. For example, I arrived in Vietnam, and my first day of this experience that I had at the Endangered Primate Rescue Center, there was a tree that fell into a cage. Yeah, and it was actually it's not really a cage. It's more like a mountain with a fence around it. But anyways, there was a tree lying on the fence, and somebody has to remove this tree. And if there's some tourist who is obviously interested in getting his hands dirty, there's nothing that speaks against helping out a little bit and adding some value in that kind of way. And even if it's only a one-day job, they can definitely be happy about somebody about some helping hands. And for example, when I came there before I flew to Vietnam, I had a call with the manager of this program. And she told me that there's a huge problem in Vietnam of getting high quality electronic devices, because obviously the supply chain doesn't really work out the way that we are used to here in the United States or Europe or wherever, where you can just go to Amazon and just order whatever you like. In Vietnam, it doesn't work out that way. So they were asking for wildlife cameras and SD cards, the memory cards for cameras. So the day before my flight, I went to the electronics store and bought like 3 wildlife cameras and a handful of SD cards, and that was kind of my donation to the park when I arrived there. And I think it's not very difficult to find ways to support an organization that you are interested or passionate about, even if it's only a financial donation that you can maybe possibly do by PayPal. It takes you a couple of minutes to do it, and a couple of minutes of research to find a program, a couple of minutes to send a little donation. And even if it's only 10 or 20 euros in a country like Vietnam, you can pay a worker for a day or a couple of days from that money. So it makes a difference. Yeah, and I can only encourage everybody to think, to try to get a little bit of creative to add some value to the origin of the animals that you are passionate about.
Well said. Welcome back, Phil.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I have a bunch of baby ornates that are bickering, so I've also had to kind of sporadically jump over and make sure they don't murder one another.
Sounds important.
Yeah, it can be pretty important when you have a bunch of them over here. They get grumpy, and it's just like, all right, you little bastards, just get along, would you?
All right.
Yeah. Well, again, I apologize for kind of missing out on the last like 10 minutes of that part of the conversation. I as much as I'm enjoying all of this as well, we're coming right up on a lot of time here, and I gotta meet my wife for lunch. Yeah, I don't have to stop right this second, but if we could, if that's okay, if we towards a close, and then obviously love to do this again, Ben. Like, I don't want to, I'm not trying to be like, well, that was cool, see you later,
Yeah, definitely. Of course, I can also see myself getting a little bit tired, because of all this English conversation. It's not always very easy for me.
Sure.
But maybe I want to maybe get a few things off my chest, if that's okay.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe for those of you who are watching the podcast on YouTube, maybe one or the other might be wondering why my video is blurred. I hope the blurring it worked out at the end. But yeah, let me maybe say something about that. Yeah, because so I always knew that I wanted to do a podcast like that. So share my story, share my experiences, and maybe even offer some insights or lessons to people who are kind of on the wrong path. Maybe for those of you who are, maybe you do not realize that you are, but deep down, I'm pretty sure you know. And I'm speaking as a as a guy who was formerly on your side too, everybody who is not doing the right thing at the moment, try to get your life right. And I wanted to blur my face just to be as honest and transparent about everything as possible. Yeah, and as most of us, I also have a life as a professional worker in some kind of sense, and I show my face on the internet in my job, and I don't want to put some stones in front of my way in my job by sharing the stories that I'm sharing here. So to me, it was important not to show my face at the moment. I'm not showing my face on my Instagram too. But to me, it was an amazing experience to speak with you and to get some stuff off my chest. It's also maybe some kind of therapy for myself, just to reflect on my former life a little bit. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of topics that could also be very interesting to speak to you about. So we have been mostly focused on my past. Yeah. But it's only stories. Like I'm still doing stuff at the moment, and I'm more proud than ever about what I'm doing at the moment. And I feel like I can really add a lot of value to the community with what I'm doing at the moment. And I'm not sure if it's the right time to get into it right now, because it can take up a lot of time. It's about the animals that I'm working with at the moment, that I'm extremely grateful to be allowed to work with them at the moment, and also about the projects that I'm building. And yes, if it's okay for you, maybe we can figure out another date to meet up again in the future. Yeah, and I would really be very grateful about that.
Let's get it on the calendar, and we'll have a part two, because I agree. There's so much that you're doing that I find personally inspiring that I want to talk to you about. And so, yeah, we got to have you back, and I'll schedule something with you as soon as we're off the call here to make sure that it happens.
Amazing. Yeah, it's very, to me, it feels like an amazing achievement to be on your podcast, to be honest. For quite some time, I was feeling like I was not really worth it, to speak out here, because there are so many icons of the industry or of the scene that you are inviting to your podcast. But yes, I enjoy the conversation, and I think it's maybe also interesting for a couple of people out there.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and I appreciate it for various reasons too. I mean, that there's something about being able to get insight in this way that feels different, that feels like educational and enlightening. And, I really enjoy getting perspectives from people that are so different from mine, whether it's because of their experience or their past or, whatever it may be. So I think it's really valuable to have this kind of stuff. And I think it speaks to your character that you've been willing to sort of put this out there and talk about it in a way, because I don't think a lot of people would talk about this sort of thing, So, we have an appreciation for the fact that you decided to do that and decided to do that here on our show. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll definitely.
And I would just echo what Phil said. Just like, I really appreciate your willingness to speak candidly, about your experiences, and just can really see your growth as an individual, and just your discernment, and it's appreciated. I appreciate you bringing yourself here and being authentic with us.
Yeah, it was a long struggle to I don't know, look back on what I did and distance myself enough from it to be able to speak about it, because yes, maybe it's also interesting to some of the people out there to know the kind of sentence that was put on me. I'm not sure if we spoke about it, but I was sentenced at the end of the day to 1 year of prison time on 2 years of probation. So I was still allowed to be a free man, but for 2 years I had to be very careful about what I'm doing. But actually, maybe it's not the right thing to say like that. I didn't have to be very careful about what I'm doing. I just had to live a normal life. And it was like a different life that I used to live before, but really helped me to get my mindset about a lot of topics right and to organize my life. And to everybody out there who is not living on the law, I think you can say that.
Yeah.
Get your life right. Start at the bottom, start at the fundamentals, get a well-paying job so that you can support your life, so that you are not even if you try to make some money flipping animals, because I know there are a lot of people out there who do that. Try to find something that is better paying, because there's so much money out there in the world to be made. I'm sure there's going to be a more profitable way for you to support your life. And do not make yourself I think it's a good idea not to rely on the money that you make from keeping animals. Breeding animals and whatever, making some money along the way, it's a cool thing. Yes, I don't have anything against that, but don't set up your life in such a way so that you have to rely on the money that you have to make, because that's the beginning of the big failure. And start at the fundamentals. Try to get your mindset right. Try to think about what's important to you, and try to really reflect on why you want to keep and work with animals before you really make investments or steps into keeping them. And once you understand your own psychology, you're on a better path. I'm pretty sure about that. And I wish I had done that earlier, but now I'm really happy about myself at the moment, and it's going pretty well. Hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah, may it continue.
Hell yeah.
I'm not really sure. To me, it's also like coming to an end, and I don't want to. No, it's okay. It's okay.
Well, should we do our closing question?
Mm-hmm.
You go. You take it, Phil.
Yeah, Ben. So the closing question. I'm sure you have heard it on other episodes of the show, but why herpetoculture, and however you want to interpret that question.
So herpetoculture in general, it was always a part of my identity and always like the main motor in my life, you can say, the main engine that is driving me forward, because really there are so many, I want to say, fantasies or ideas in my head that I want to see really brought into real life, that are connected to the herpetoculture or animal keeping topic. And if I don't do it, I have the feeling like nobody else is going to do it. So mainly I'm speaking about my lifetime goal will be to build a fully autonomous giant greenhouse, the dimensions of something maybe on the lower end, something like 50 to maybe 100 square meters, and fully autonomous, speaking about energy production, water collection, money generation, maybe even, and this contraption having a positive influence on the community. And I think there is so much innovation to be done and so much positive energy to be presented to the community that I feel the urge of I have to do it, because I don't see anybody else doing it the way that I can imagine it. And I want to call myself, at the end of my life, I want to call myself somebody who has helped to improve the standard of care that is happening in the community itself. And it's still a long way to go, but I'm sure we're going to get there. And just to make animal keeping in general better by probably joining technology and the methods that we are already using. So the slogan on my Instagram, it says, greenhouse redefined, unleashing the potential of vivariums with cutting edge technology. And that's basically what I want to do. I want to bring different topics into the hobby that are maybe at the moment not really connected. For example, solar energy storage, maybe even crypto mining as a heating source and money generation at the same time. And I just want to build vivariums that make sense to people who are not in the hobby. Yeah. Maybe producing vegetables or herbs, maybe producing eggs that you can eat by keeping quail in your setup, like I'm doing at the moment. And I think there are so many possibilities, and we are just getting started to really figure out how to build these setups that we call vivariums, or me and my boys, too, Flo and me, we call them greenhouses. Yeah.
Awesome.
Love it.
That was very well said. I love it. Great.
Cool. Well, where can everyone find you, Ben? I mean, I guess it's obvious, Unseen Diversity on Instagram.
Yeah. That's my Instagram. I'm not really active on any other social media, but to anybody who is willing to speak about certain topics, to get something off their chest if they are at the wrong path in life at the moment or whatever, feel free to reach out to me. I'm always willing to share my knowledge and my experiences. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I'll make sure that we've got links in the show notes. And thank you again. I'm going to hit the button.
Thank you very much, you too.